I worked night shifts as an orderly at a small-town hospital. It was usually quiet, just me and the machines buzzing in the background. I had been there for almost a year, so I thought I knew what to expect. But a few weeks ago, things changed. One night, I headed to the disused wing. I needed to restock supplies. The place was dark, and I focused on my job. But then, I heard faint voices. I thought maybe someone was on break, so I opened the door. The room was empty, just machines humming softly. I brushed it off. Maybe I was just tired. But the voices kept coming back, night after night. Sometimes it sounded like children, low laughter mixed with whispers. It sent chills down my spine. I kept telling myself I was imagining things. Then I started noticing shadows, just quick glimpses out of the corner of my eye. I thought it was just the flickering lights, but I could have sworn I saw a small figure dart past me a few times. My heart raced each time, but I shook it off. By the third night of the voices, dread crept in. As I walked down the hallway, the soft sounds echoed too loud in the stillness. I turned a corner, and there was that shadow again. I squinted, trying to see. Nothing was there. Still, my routine felt different now. I felt anxious, like someone was watching me. I tried to stay busy, but the voices were getting louder. They seemed to follow me. I felt lightheaded, and my palms were sweaty, even though the air was cool. On that night, as I was restocking supplies again, I heard the laughter closer this time. I spun around quickly, my heart sinking. Again, there was no one. But then I felt a cold breeze sweep past me. I gasped for breath. I didn't believe in ghosts or anything like that. I thought maybe it was just exhaustion playing tricks on me. But the uneasy feeling stuck around. A few hours later, during my final round, I stood outside the disused wing where I'd heard the voices before. My heart was pounding. I even whispered, "Is anyone there?" Silence. Then a child's giggle echoed from within. I stepped back, my mind racing. I didn't know what to think. Suddenly, I heard a soft voice behind me. "Why are you scared?" I turned around slowly. There was nobody there. The hair on my neck stood up. I knew I couldn't just ignore this. Every night, it felt more real. I started to feel trapped by the shadows. The voices and shadows haunted my thoughts. Why were they here? And who were they? I didn't have answers, but I knew I wouldn't forget those nights. I still hear the laughter sometimes, even now, echoing in my mind. That night, I decided to face the source of the laughter. I wasn't sure why, but something in me urged me to find out. I took a deep breath and stepped back into the disused wing. The air felt heavy, almost thick with anticipation. As I walked down the dimly lit corridor, I could hear my footsteps echoing. Every step felt like a challenge, like I was intruding on something I wasn't meant to see. I could already hear the soft laughter again, this time clearer than ever. I followed the sound, moving cautiously. Then I reached a door I had never noticed before. It was slightly ajar, and an eerie glow seeped through the crack. A chill ran down my spine. The laughter morphed into a chorus of whispers. It felt almost inviting, but my gut told me to turn back. Still, I pushed the door open. Inside was a small room filled with dusty toys and old medical equipment. It looked like a forgotten playroom, complete with a tattered stuffed bear sitting in the corner. The laughter grew louder, bouncing off the walls, and I instinctively flinched. Where was it coming from? That's when I saw it, a small figure darting behind the bear. My breath caught in my throat as I squinted, trying to make sense of it. I was certain it was a child. But why was there a child here, alone? The moment I felt that surge of fear, the laughter stopped, replaced by a tense silence. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. No response. I felt foolish for calling. But before I could leave, the bear swayed slightly, as if nudged by an unseen hand. I stepped back, heart racing, and bumped into an old bedside table. The sound shattered the silence. A soft giggle broke through, high-pitched and sweet, but it sent shivers down my spine. I turned back toward the room, but the bear was still. Only the faint sound of children's laughter remained. It filled my ears and smothered my thoughts. I backed out slowly, focusing on keeping my breathing steady. My instinct screamed at me to run. Just as I turned to leave, I glanced at the bear one more time. Its button eyes seemed to follow me. Panic gripped me. I stumbled into the hallway, nearly tripping over my own feet. Outside the room, I steadied myself. I needed to get out. But as I made my way back down the corridor, I felt a presence at my back. I quickened my pace. The soft voice returned, whispering my name. "Help us." I halted, panic flooding my system. Who was asking for help? I turned, but nothing was there. The cold sweat trickled down my spine as I ran. My heart hammered in my chest, and the whispers grew louder, echoing in my mind. I burst into the main hallway, gasping for breath. I thought I was safe, but the laughter still echoed. It clung to me. As I made my way to the exit, doubts crept in. Were those children lost? Why were they trapped here? I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. I needed answers. And as I stepped into the parking lot, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from my colleague asking if I was okay. "Something's in the hospital," I typed, my fingers shaking. Something's wrong. But just as I pressed send, the lights in the hospital flickered. Then, everything went dark. The darkness swallowed me whole. I stood frozen for a moment, my mind racing. A part of me wanted to flee, but I couldn't leave without knowing more about what I had just experienced. I fumbled for my phone, desperate for light, but the screen remained black. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. No response. Not even the usual hum of the hospital's machinery filled the air. Unease wrapped around me like a fog. I felt my way back toward the entrance, each step careful and deliberate. In the stillness, distant voices seemed to weave through the darkness. I wasn't imagining the laughter anymore. It was different, almost as if children were playing a game. And then I heard it again. "Help us." The voice was clearer now, filled with a sense of urgency that made my skin crawl. I froze mid-step, wrestling with my instincts. Should I follow the voice or run for safety? But before I could decide, a faint glimmer caught my eye. It pulsed from the corner of the corridor, just beyond the flickering emergency exit sign. My heart raced anew as I moved toward it, drawn by an inexplicable force. As I walked, the laughter returned, echoing around me, swirling in the corridor. I rounded the corner and stumbled upon another door I had never noticed before. It looked old and rusted, like it hadn't been opened in years. I reached for the handle, hesitating for just a second. The laughter intensified, causing my heart to pound. I turned the knob and pushed the door open. Inside was a small storage room, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. Shelves lined the walls, crammed with papers, old toys, and strange trinkets. But what caught my attention was a small, brightly colored box sitting atop a dusty table. The sight of it pulled me closer. I approached cautiously, dread curling in my stomach. As I opened the box, I found old photographs inside, pictures of children, their smiles bright and carefree. But as I flipped through them, I noticed something odd. In the background of each image, a shadow loomed, just out of focus. Each shadow seemed to grow darker, closer, with every photo I examined. Suddenly, the laughter crescendoed into a choking urge. The voices now hadn't just asked for help, they were pleading, desperate. Please, find us. My heart raced and panic surged. I slammed the box shut. I had to leave, but another thought crept in. What if these children were trapped in the hospital? What if I could help them? Just then, a chilling breeze swept through the room. Papers flew off the shelves, scattering across the floor. The door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang. I spun around, dread pooling in my chest. "Help us," the voices whispered again, but this time they sounded closer. I was not alone. I took a step back, my breath quickening, when I caught sight of movement to my left. I turned abruptly, fueled by sheer panic and desperate for answers, but the room was empty. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice cracking. Silence answered. I was suffocating in the shadows that danced around me. I had to escape, but the surrounding darkness felt alive, closing in. I grabbed the doorknob and turned it, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped. The laughter erupted again, now haunting. I could feel their gaze. They were watching. If I couldn't find a way out, would I be trapped here forever, just like them? Just as I was about to lose all hope, I heard a loud crash behind me. I turned again, almost expecting a figure to leap from the shadows. But instead, I saw the photos scattered across the ground, twisting in the chaos of unseen forces. The flickering lights finally went out. Now I was engulfed in pitch-black silence. I stood frozen in the darkness, heart pounding loudly in my ears. The silence was oppressive, like a weight pressing down on me. The laughter had stopped, replaced by a heavy stillness. I felt trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I closed my eyes, hoping to gather my thoughts, but the image of the box and the photos haunted me. I felt an overwhelming urge to break free from the storage room. I wrestled with the doorknob once more, twisting and pulling with all my strength, but it wouldn't budge. "Come on," I hissed under my breath, desperation bubbling to the surface. Suddenly, I felt a chill sweep over me, a sense that something ominous was closing in. In that instant, I remembered the faint light I had seen earlier, the one that called to me from down the corridor. Maybe there was another way out. I had to move. With clenched fists, I took a deep breath and stumbled toward where I thought the door had been. My fingers brushed against the cold wall, guiding me forward. Slowly, carefully, I navigated the cramped space, each shuffle amplified in the thick silence. As I reached the edge of the room, I extended my hand, searching for the doorframe. And then I felt it, an outline, the cool metal of the doorknob. I grasped it tightly and pushed. The door swung open suddenly, sending a rush of cool air into the stuffy room. The hallway before me was dark, but I felt compelled to step through, driven by the nagging feeling that the answers I sought lay ahead. I crept into the corridor, heart racing again, but now it was mixed with an electric thrill. The laughter was gone, replaced by a faint, rhythmic tapping. My pulse quickened. A strange sense of hope filled me. I would find them. I moved toward the emergency exit sign, which now flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows along the walls. The tapping grew louder, rapid and frantic. Was it coming from my left? I turned, my heart in my throat. Just beyond a doorway, I spotted more photos littering the ground. An instinct told me I shouldn't look, but I couldn't resist. I knelt and picked one up. It was another image of the children, their smiles somehow more haunting than I remembered. Behind them, the shadow was thicker, darker. It seemed to crawl closer, already consuming their joy. "Help us!"
A whisper floated through the air, startling me. This time it felt more urgent, demanding. The children were begging. "Who are you?" I shouted, fear rising like bile in my throat. "What do you want?"
In response, the shadows flickered around me, and the tapping stopped. A profound stillness fell, but I could sense a presence surrounding me, the air thickening with unseen watchers. I jumped to my feet, adrenaline surging. "I won't let you take me!" I yelled defiantly. But the shadows began to swirl faster. I didn't know what would happen next, but something was changing within the darkness. I felt that tug again, pulling me. My legs moved on their own, racing toward the dim light at the end of the hall. And as I bolted forward, I knew there was no turning back. That's when I saw it. A door I had never noticed before. A strange symbol was etched into the wood, glowing faintly, beckoning me closer. Would this be my salvation, or had I just run deeper into the darkness? The moment I laid eyes on the door, an unsettling mix of curiosity and dread washed over me. The symbol was unlike anything I had ever seen, an intricate design that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. I approached it, my heart racing, as the shadows danced behind me, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. The corridor felt like it was closing in, and I hesitated, glancing back. What had happened to the rhythmic tapping? The silence was now brittle, broken only by my own breath. I turned back to the door. The glow beckoned me. It was drawing me in, promising answers, maybe even some form of closure. I reached out, fingers grazing the smooth wood. As soon as I did, a shock coursed through me. The door trembled under my touch, and I felt a warmth radiate from within. It was inviting, but terrifying all the same. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. It creaked loudly, echoing down the empty hallway. I stepped inside, and my pulse quickened. The room was small, filled with shelves of dusty books and more pictures pinned to the walls. A desk sat in the corner, cluttered with papers and an old lamp flickering erratically. My eyes scanned the chaos, but it was the pictures that caught my attention. They were more of the children, but some were different. Strange figures stood behind them, their features shrouded in mystery. I stepped closer to study them, heart hammering. Suddenly, a loud bang rattled the shelves, making me jump. I spun around, but the shadows seemed to retreat, leaving me alone in the room. Just the wind, or was something else at play? Then I heard it, a soft, mournful wail that echoed through the walls, growing louder with each passing second. It was coming from below me. My instinct screamed at me to leave, to slam the door shut and run. But something held me rooted in place. I had to know. I approached the small window, peering through the glass. The corridor beneath looked different, distorted, as if the building itself was shifting. The wailing rose to a fever pitch. It felt like a call for help, desperate and full of pain. "Do you hear that?" I whispered, stepping away from the window. But the room was silent, the shadows watching me, waiting for my next move. A pulling sensation surged from behind me, and the glow from the door flickered ominously. I turned back, and the glowing symbol intensified, casting a bright light that pushed the shadows aside. My heart raced, fighting against the fear that threatened to consume me. Then, without warning, a figure materialized in the flickering glow. A child, eyes wide and pleading. "Help us!" The voice came through clear as day, cutting through the heavy silence. I stumbled back, dread pooling in my stomach. "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, though I was terrified of the answer. But the glowing symbol began to pulse faster, as if responding to the child's presence. Behind the image, shadows thickened, swirling angrily. I could feel the temperature drop, the air becoming dense and charged. Before I could process what was happening, the child pointed toward the book-strewn desk. "Find the truth," they cried, and in that moment the shadows lunged at me, dark fear clawing at my consciousness, pulling me down into despair. I needed to escape, but whatever was behind me was insatiable. With one last glance at the child, I bolted for the door, heart racing. I could almost hear my own voice urging me to leave before it was too late. I reached for the doorknob, but it had begun to glow too brightly, too hot to touch. And then everything went dark. I jolted awake, disoriented and gasping for air. The darkness pressed around me, thick and suffocating. It took a moment before I realized I was still in the room with the door. The glowing symbol lay still, its light faded to a faint shimmer. I was on the floor, heart pounding, and a wave of confusion washed over me. Had it all been a dream? I pushed myself up, brushing dust off my clothes as my eyes scanned the room. The child was gone, but the air felt different, charged still with an unshakable tension. I heard the wail again, but this time it was softer, more distant. It pulled at me, tugging on a deep-seated instinct that whispered something terrible was happening. I stood and approached the desk. Papers lay scattered, some handwritten notes mixed in with old photographs. One photo caught my eye. Children playing near a playground, laughing joyfully. In the background, I saw the outline of the same symbol from the door, melding with the trees. My pulse quickened. The symbol must mean something. As I reached for it, a loud crash resounded from somewhere deeper in the building. I jumped, adrenaline surging. Instinctively, I looked toward the door. I needed to investigate, to find the source of that sound. It felt like a call to action, the fear pushing me forward against my better judgment. I stepped into the dim corridor, the shadows flickering uneasily. As I moved cautiously, the wailing grew louder, but it was muffled, almost like it was coming from behind a wall. I strained to hear, trying to place it, but all I could think was that there were others here, trapped like I was. I rounded a corner, the light from the flickering lamps casting elongated shapes on the walls. I spotted another door, slightly ajar, and the noise surged from within. Gathering my courage, I nudged it open. Inside, the room appeared larger, filled with old crates and an unsettling sight. More pictures pinned across the walls, each depicting the same playground from the previous photo, only now they were taken at night. That's when I saw it, a figure standing among the shadows at the far side of the room. My heart stopped. It seemed human but warped, its form shifting. It felt wrong. "Help us," it whispered, the sound echoing like a haunting refrain. My breath hitched, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Without thinking, I stepped back, ready to bolt. But the figure lingered, arms raised as if trying to summon something unseen. My mind raced, wrestling with fear. What was happening here? Who were these figures, and what did they want from me? A loud, furious crash erupted behind me. I spun around, fear surging through me as I faced the door I had just come through. It slammed shut with a deafening bang, sealing me inside the room with the figure. Desperate, I clawed at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Then the lights flickered irregularly, plunging the room into darkness. In that moment, I felt a presence pressing in from all corners, cold and heavy. I turned back to the figure, but it was gone. I was alone, trapped with only the sounds of the wailing echoing around me. My heart raced in my chest, and I knew this was far from over. I gasped in the silence, understanding that I had to uncover the truth behind those blurry images and what had happened in this cursed place.
Before I could gather my thoughts, I heard a child's voice calling me from the shadows. "Find us." And just like that, I felt the walls surrounding me begin to close in. The darkness pressed against me, suffocating and thick. I felt the coldness wrap around my limbs like icy fingers. I had to move. The child's voice still echoed in my mind, pleading for help, igniting a flicker of determination amidst my rising panic. I began to inch forward, feeling along the wall to find my bearings. The photographs loomed large in my memory, the smiles of children forever captured in time, their joy now tainted by the darkness. I needed to get out of this room. I needed to find the source of that voice. As I carefully navigated the space, I could hear the wailing again, much closer now. It seemed to resonate through the floorboards, vibrating up my legs. I pressed my palm against the door I had entered through, praying it would budge, but it held firm like a concrete wall. I felt trapped. The flickering lights made it hard to think straight. I took a deep breath, desperately forcing myself to calm down. "Focus," I whispered to myself. "You have to find a way out."
That's when I noticed a faint light emanating from the far corner of the room. It slipped through the cracks of another door slightly ajar, glowing timidly amidst the gloom. Without second thoughts, I darted toward it, hoping it would lead me to safety or, at the very least, answers. I pushed the door open and stumbled into a narrow hallway. The air felt heavier than before, tinged with a sweet and decaying scent that made my stomach churn. The wailing intensified as if I had crossed into a different realm. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Then I froze. At the far end of the hallway, a shadow shifted. It was small, but its presence felt immense. The figure was humanoid, yet it exuded a sense of sorrow. "Please," it whispered, its voice fractured like glass. "Help us." "Who are you?" I demanded, unable to keep the fear from my voice. The figure remained still, but I could see its features beginning to sharpen in the dim light. It looked like a child, eyes filled with despair. "You have to find the others. They're here, hidden." My heart raced as I pushed forward, drawn to the child's urgency. Where are they? But the moment I got closer, it evaporated into the darkness, leaving behind only the wailing. It wrapped around me like a cloak, demanding my attention. Panic surged again. I couldn't stand there. I had to keep moving. Just then, I spotted something shining on the floor. I knelt to pick it up, and my hands closed around a small, rusty key. It was old, heavy, and seemed to pulse with energy. "A key," I muttered, confused. I quickly stood up, the realization hitting me that I had no idea what it opened or where to find a lock. Time was running out, and behind me the wailing grew louder, morphing into cries of anguish. I turned back toward the hallway, but hesitated. I could sense something in the air, a shift. I wasn't sure what awaited me behind those shadows. But as the cries engulfed me, I steeled myself. I wouldn't let fear paralyze me. In a flash, I bolted forward, clutching the key tightly. I needed answers. I had to solve this mystery before it consumed me. The moment I stepped back into the corridor, the lights flickered once more, and I knew this was just the beginning. Shadows danced along the walls, and in that darkness I caught sight of more figures lurking just beyond the reach of the light. And suddenly I understood. Finding the others was my only chance. The urgency grew, a desperate race against the unknown lurking in the shadows ahead. "I'll find you," I whispered, steeling myself for the challenges to come. I pressed my back against the wall as I moved cautiously down the hallway.
The air thickened with tension. Every sound made me jump. I could still hear the wailing, but it was mixed with something else now, like whispers weaving through the darkness. I tightened my grip on the key, the metal cool against my palm. The faint light flickered ahead, guiding me deeper into the shadowy corridor. I came to another door, this one sturdy and imposing. My heart pounded. I wondered if the key would fit. I hesitated, still feeling the weight of uncertainty settling in my stomach. I took a breath and turned the key in the lock. It clicked. Pushing the door open, I entered a dimly lit room, scattered with broken furniture and old medical supplies. Dust danced in the air, sparkling like stars in the limited light. This room felt like it had been forgotten for years. My eyes swept the space, searching for any sign of the children. The walls were lined with peeling paint and faded posters, all depicting smiling faces, but their smiles felt wrong, distorted by the layers of neglect. Suddenly, I heard it again, the soft, urgent whisper, "Help us." It seemed to come from the far corner of the room. My pulse quickened, urging me forward despite the gnawing fear in my gut. As I stepped closer, a breeze swept through, extinguishing the flickering light. I felt darkness envelop me, and panic surged. "Please," the voice came again, cracking under the weight of sorrow. I fumbled in the dark, desperately trying to reignite the flicker of light that had vanished. I could feel the icy breath of the room closing in around me, overwhelming my senses. "Where are you?" I shouted into the blackness, hoping for a response. The silence felt heavy, pressing against my chest. I needed to think clearly. Then, just as my eyes adjusted to the dark, I noticed a figure illuminated by moonlight filtering through a shattered window. It was another child, older this time, with hollow cheeks and wild hair. My heart broke at the sight of him. "You're not safe here," he warned, his voice wrestling with despair. "What happened?" I asked, stepping closer, but I couldn't shake the dread creeping down my spine. "Where are the others?" "They're trapped. We all are." His gaze darted nervously toward the shadows, and my stomach twisted. His words made my skin prickle. Why were they trapped? I recalled the small figure I had seen earlier, giving me hope. "I want to help you, but I don't know how." Suddenly, the child's expression changed, and he pointed behind me. I spun around just in time to see a dark shape emerging from the other side of the room. A chilling laugh echoed off the walls, a sound so unnatural that it felt like ice slicing through my nerves. "You shouldn't be here," it hissed. My heart raced. I had to get out. I barely registered the child's terrified eyes as I backed away, scrambling toward the exit. As I retreated, I realized the key still hung heavily in my hand. Maybe it was my way out. But first, I needed to understand what I had stumbled into and how to save those innocent souls trapped in the darkness. Before I could reach the door, the figure lurked closer, the laughter booming louder, drowning out everything else. "You can't leave," it taunted, the shadows gathering around it like a thick fog. I lunged for the door, heart pounding. The key felt like a lifeline. But would it be enough to unlock not just my escape, but also the mystery that bound them? As my fingers brushed against the doorknob, I felt the rush of adrenaline. I twisted the key and yanked the door open, stumbling back into the hallway. A gasp escaped my lips as I turned, expecting the figure to follow. But for a moment, silence reigned. I pressed my back against the frame, straining my ears. Then the laughter came again, soft and sinister, almost like a cruel lullaby. It slithered through the air, taunting me, wrapping around me like chains. I had to move. I took off down the hallway, my footsteps echoing in the emptiness. Each step felt weighted, as if the ground itself wanted to stop me. I darted past the door I had just fled, eyes wild. I didn't know where to go, but I had to find a way out before whatever was lurking caught me. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, distorting like a static-filled radio. "Help us," they cried, blending with the laughter, creating a cacophony that threatened to swallow me whole. I spotted stairs at the end of the corridor, dimly lit and shrouded in shadow. I rushed toward them, throwing open the door and plunging into the stairwell. A cool breeze brushed my skin, cooling the sweat that had begun to bead on my forehead. I glanced back, half expecting to see the entity creeping after me, but nothing stirred in the shadows. I descended quickly, each step beating a rhythm of fear in my chest. The whispers faded beneath the pounding of my heart, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching. I halted at the bottom of the stairs, breathing heavily, trying to regain my composure. Ahead, I could see light spilling through a door at the end of the hallway. Hope flickered. I rushed toward it, reaching the door and pushing it open. I found myself in a large room, filled with rows of empty beds, all neatly made. A flickering fluorescent light buzzed above, the only sign of life in the sterile environment. But the room felt suffocating. An overwhelming sense of unease washed over me. I took a few steps inside and noticed movement in the corner. A curtain flapped like a flag in the wind, giving me a glimmer of hope. Maybe there were people here. Maybe I wasn't alone after all. As I approached, the air chilled, and the laughter echoed again, this time closer, more aggressive. I froze, every muscle in my body tensed. "You need to leave," I called out, my voice shaking. "Please, show yourself." The curtain billowed and then stilled. A figure stepped out from behind it, but as the light flickered again, I gasped. It was the child from earlier, but this time his eyes were filled with something else, despair mixed with desperation. "We tried," he said softly, his voice trembling. "We tried to get help." "What's happening?" I asked, stepping closer. "That thing," he said, glancing at the door. "You have to find the others before it's too late."
I felt a shiver run down my spine. What did he mean by the others? Before I could think further, the lights flickered and an intense darkness pooled around me, making my skin crawl. Then everything went dark. I stood in a void, suspended in darkness, with the echoes of the child's warning still ringing in my ears. The world that had surrounded me moments ago faded away, leaving only the chilling silence and the frenetic beating of my heart. I felt completely lost, adrift in a realm devoid of light and sound. Then, as if materializing from the gloom, I heard the laughter again. It was softer now, almost beckoning. "You have to find us." It carried a sense of urgency that urged me to move, although I stood petrified, grappling with fear. Where were the children? What had happened to them? The void shifted, and I caught a glimmer of light, faint but insistent. I forced myself to take a step toward it. The structure of the world began to reassemble around me. Before I knew it, I stood back in the large room, surrounded by the rows of empty beds once more. The light flickered above, its buzz a reminder of the living world I had just tasted. But the air was colder now, almost electric with dread. I steadied myself and recalled the child's plea. Whatever this thing was, it sought fear, or maybe even worse. I had to not only escape, but also to confront it. Determined, I turned back toward the curtain. "I'm coming for you," I promised, my voice a whisper but resonating with resolve. I approached slowly, heart thundering. I needed to find those children, help them escape, and break whatever hold this darkness had over them. As I yanked the curtain aside, the chill deepened. The spot behind it was empty, save for scattered toys, remnants of laughter tangled in the shadows. Though my heart sank, disappointment twisted into renewed focus. I couldn't turn back. Suddenly, the figure emerged, again, the child from before. He stood at the doorway, face pinched with a mixture of hope and fear. You found the key?" he asked, eyes darting to my hand. "I have it," I replied, clutching the rusty key, doubt creeping back. "But what does it unlock? What if it's not the answer?" He stepped closer. "Trust me, it will lead you to them. You have to remember, the door doesn't just protect, it reveals." Fueled now by hope, I raced back through the cold room, glancing once more to see if any remnants of happiness remained. The children were here somewhere. I clutched the key tightly, feeling the pulse of its energy quicken as I headed to a door I hadn't noticed before, hidden, almost swallowed by the shadows. As I unlocked it, a faint light flared to life from the cracks. The door swung wide. The room inside was small, cluttered, and alive with sounds, the whispers of many voices intertwining in pleading syncopation. Around me, specters of the children manifested, faces of joy blighted with pain and longing. "Please help us."
"They!" cried in unison, and I felt the weight of their despair wash over me. "What do you need from me?" I shouted, feeling the shadows claw at my limbs, threatening to pull me into the void again. "Tell me!" Their voices rose, a blend of sorrow and unity. "Find the heart of the place, break the chain. Only then can we be free." The shadows pulsed dangerously as I braced for what came next. I glimpsed a faintly glowing object in the center of the room, a chest, ancient and worn. The whispers became louder, beckoning me toward it. This was it. But I could also feel it, the sharp chill in the air, like a predator lurking behind me. The entity was close, and I would have to fight to reach the heart of this place. For the first time, I forced myself to face it. "Whatever you are, I'm not afraid anymore," I yelled, plunging toward the chest. In that moment, the laughter morphed into a furious roar. Shadows lashed out at me, tendrils reaching toward my skin, trying to ensnare me, to drown me again in darkness. But I pressed on, fighting against the tendrils that coiled around my legs, feeling their grip tighten. With every ounce of strength, I threw open the chest. Inside lay a collection of bright, shining stones, each reminiscent of the children's laughter, each one pulsating with the memories, the dreams, the very essence of their joy. As I pulled one from the chest, energy surged through me, and the shadows shrieked in response. "No!" they howled, their voices twisting into rage. As I clutched the stone, I felt warmth blooming within my palm, illuminating everything around me. The shadows recoiled as light erupted, a sudden burst washing over the room. The children's whispers turned into a chorus of laughter. I felt the darkness begin to unravel, fading into nothingness, pure light engulfing all that had haunted me. "Thank you," the children shouted, their figures brightening, their smiles returning as they transformed into sparkling motes of light. They shimmered and danced around me, swirling in joy as the dark essence began to dissolve. But even then, a sense of disbelief crept in. What had I fully released? Was this truly the end? As the light engulfed me, I felt questions spring forth, clinging to my mind. What had happened to the source of the darkness? Were they truly free? And just like that, in a flash of brilliance, I stood outside the hospital, breathless, with the first light of dawn stretching across the sky. I staggered away from the building, every step rooted in disbelief. In the distance, I thought I heard laughter again, echoing in the whispers of the morning breeze. But whether they were free or trapped, whether I had truly won, those questions sat heavy in my mind as I turned my back on the hospital, unsure if I could ever set foot in that place again. I'd escaped the darkness, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something lingered in the shadows that hadn't been resolved.
I might never know if they were truly safe, if the darkness was finally defeated, or merely waiting in the undercurrents, biding its time. I carried that uncertainty with me, feeling an ache of loss mingling with an unsettling relief, ready to tackle whatever awaited me in the vast unknown.